Hi everyone, welcome to Texas. Welcome to San Antonio. It's been here for a good, I don't know, 10 days or so at this point. And I have another 10 days to go. So it's been a 3-week long trip so far. And it's gotten significantly colder. So when we first got here, it was really, really warm. It was so warm. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I left New York behind. You know, it was like high 80s. I was walking around in summer gear. And now, unfortunately, over these past 9 or 8 days or so, it's gotten so cold that I actually had to whip out like a winter jacket and everything. And it's still quite cold. What makes matters worse is that the place I'm currently staying in, it's an Airbnb. It doesn't have central heating. So they gave me like one of those little small tiny heaters, like legit the tiniest heater I've ever seen in my entire life for the entire space that I'm occupying. And I got sick. I'm not sure if it was from that. I have the suspicion it was though, because I'm usually really good with the immune system and everything. So just the entire stress of, you know, moving and being in Texas, being like in a whole new area, in addition to not having proper heating and it getting like really, really cold, like freezing temperatures. Like I think we had 26 at one point at night, which is Fahrenheit. So it's like -2 Celsius. So it's been quite cold. It's definitely not been warm. That's at nighttime though. And then during daytime, it tends to warm up a little bit more. But it hasn't really gone back to, you know, when I first came here to that high 80s that I was kind of used to when I first arrived. Anyhow, we're here now. What are the first impressions of Texas? Unfortunately, I have to say, not like super grand. I mean, it's fine. People are super, super nice. Don't get me wrong. You definitely have the southern hospitality that you have elsewhere too, though. So you have that in New Orleans, you have that in parts of Florida, you have that in Alabama, you have that, you know, in certain parts. You also have, I don't want to say rednecks, but I've definitely seen like white trash rednecks, those kind of things. You've had a lot of poor people, like beggars, actually, homeless people. I've already seen them. But everyone's super friendly, you know, like servers in a restaurant, super nice. I've been taking a lot of Ubers, so a lot of friendly Uber drivers. Now, what has been shocking to me though, and something that I didn't expect to that extent, was that the amount of people who actually still are wearing a mask, so a face muzzle, how I like to call it. And for me, that's always a sign that they're not as free as they think they are. Now, my one friend was like, you know, all these mandates, yada yada, they're going to be affecting like all 50 states and all of that. And I'm like, you know, actually, I think after being here in Texas for so long already, I actually do think Texas might be that one state that might not be impacted by the mandates to the same extent all the other states like Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and all of those might be impacted, because it does feel free. You know, there's a certain energy to the land and being out here where it does feel free, despite people being under the program too. But like you wouldn't be able, I mean, so far, you know, I've asked a few people, especially people who work in restaurants, I'm like, so are you wearing your mask? Especially the servers are usually the ones wearing their mask. Are you wearing it because you haven't had your shot, or like why are you wearing it? You know, and they're like, oh hells no. Like you can wear it if you want, you don't have to wear it if you don't want. Like that's supposedly the mentality of a lot of restaurants here. But unfortunately a lot of servers seems to still wear it, which to me is a sign that you actually believe, you know, in this contagious virus that can be warded off with a face mask. And I can tell you one thing, you know, after being sick, legit sick for almost a week and having like breathing issues and all of that, and you know, for me, the worst thing you can actually do is wear a face muzzle, like wear a mask in those instances. And you know, the best thing to do is just stay home, stay away from people, which is basically what I did. But wearing a mask when you're sick is so restrictive to your breathing. Like I noticed that again because I actually had to take an Uber at one point and go to the store and just random stuff, you know. So I just noticed how bad it can be to actually wear that when you're sick. And so, you know, a mask does nothing. You know my opinion on it at this point, obviously. For me, it's just a satanic ritual. It's a sign of complacency. If you have a different opinion on that, then show me your different psychic insight and advice and YouTube channel that you have out there. If not, you can just shut up. That's all I have to say, because you really don't know energetically what it means. Otherwise, you wouldn't be wearing it. You know, everyone who kind of taps into it and energetically knows what's going on knows that. So here's a nice dinner cruise in the background, and no one's wearing anything, which is great. But the guy who's serving the food, he's actually wearing a mask. But the tour guide, who's, you know, they give like tours on the river here. It's quite expensive for what it is. I thought about doing one before I leave though. So the tour guide is not wearing anything, which is great. Like sometimes you see them wear shields too, and it's that kind of ridiculousness. It's whatever. So those are like my first impressions from here. Now keep in mind, I have kind of been out for almost a week in between too, so it's more like my first impressions of the first week or so here. Where I was being able to be, you know, out and about with people. The food isn't as cheap here as you think it would be. I'm excited to check it out, like check out maybe a rodeo place or something a bit more country, further away from a city at one point this week or so, and see if the prices are better. The food isn't as great that justifies the prices being as high, let's put it that way. You know, I've been eating myself throughout a lot of San Antonio already. The food is decent, but it's kind of expensive. Like it's almost as expensive as New York City, which kind of confirms my entire, you know, theory that no matter where you go, whether you go to Florida, whether you go to New Orleans, whether you go to even like Wyoming or whatever, the food prices are staying pretty consistent in a restaurant setting, which I think is shocking, because you really don't get the same flavors, you don't get the same service, you don't get the same whatever than you would do in a great restaurant, maybe somewhere in California or New York, right? So for me, that's always like the comparison point, and right now it's kind of like more here. I mean, I had good food here, I had great service here, but I just didn't think it would be as expensive as it is. I'm also going to be checking out Austin and see how that goes. Right now I'm actually really happy that I decided not to stay in Austin for the majority of my stay, because I have a feeling it's just not what I was looking for. It's just a bit too liberal for my taste, let's put it that way. And if you're already in Texas, you better stay away from, you know, liberal retardism, in my opinion. Like that's like the one state you really want to be in, where, you know, you just want to be left alone with that after being in New York for the past 2 years already. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, weather's colder, food is not as yummy as I thought it would be, but it's still good. I mean, some places are really, really good. People are super friendly, you know, people are definitely as friendly, if not even friendlier than I think they would be. And people are still wearing masks. That's super disappointing, meaning a form of the brainwashing is still going on. Now, one thing I have never been asked, like I've already been all over movie theaters and restaurants and everything that where you would usually need like a pass in New York for, I have not been asked a single time whether or not I'm vaccinated, you know. So that's a huge plus, because even in Montana, I kind of felt like people were always trying to get behind what my stance was on that. You know, I was in this really small town in Montana once, and like 2 people wanted to find out, oh yeah, so I got my injection, did you get yours? And I'm like, it's none of your freaking business, you know? So it was always like blatant in your face over there, whereas here it's really not in your face, and that's really nice to be in and to experience after the past year of terror, of constant, you know, injection terror in New York City, because that kind of shows, you know, people actually have stuff to do. You know, they have to go live their lives, they have their children in school and those kind of things. So that's been really, really nice. I do have to say that it's been a nice change, just to get your mind off of that. It feels more like normal life here just because of it. Is Texas freer than Florida? Well, I'm actually going to be checking out Florida again in February, so I'll keep you updated on that one. But so far, what I do have to say is it feels freer here in a sense because it's so much larger. You know, it's almost 30 million people I think they have here. Florida has like 19 million, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not really sure about the current numbers, but it does feel free here. The country's like way larger too. You know, you can definitely feel the magnitude of this state as opposed to where in Florida everything kind of feels cramped. And so that's already a huge difference with how it just feels. You know, you have more space here. There's like another tour in the background. I had to stop the video in between. So yeah, it just feels that people have more space to unfold, but it doesn't feel as old as the East Coast. You know, like the East Coast of the US is definitely like an older culture than out west and everything. So this is more like the newer part of the US. But also keep in mind, Texas, Lone Star State, they did want to be their own country at one point. And I'm sure actually they still do, like some of the hardcore ones still do. And that is really the mentality that I feel kind of comes through here, which feels nice. It feels nice to be in it. And I do want to check it out when it's warmer again, just because I'm really not impressed with the heating procedure that's going on so far. And maybe it's just a combination of bad luck, me not really needing to be here right now, those kind of things. But that really does make a huge difference, you know, when you're warm as opposed to not being warm during the colder time of the year.
I feel like that's something you're doing.
So I think if I wanted to, I'd probably check it out again, like maybe in April, like March, April, or like in the fall, like maybe September, October, November. A lot of people are not predicting another snowstorm. I personally wouldn't be surprised if it came down on them again. See, a lot of people, and this is kind of how, you know, a lot of people are still very much in the mainstream, this like, oh no, it only happens like once every 25 years and all of those things. And I'm like, well, it didn't happen because it was a natural phenomenon. You know, like people are literally out there and they burnt their snow and the snow turns black, you know. I mean, we all know those stories. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was, you know, a government-induced snow to ruin the entire infrastructure here. So that's kind of how you know, if people really think that was a natural thing to occur here, whereas there's so many videos out there saying this is not natural, this is something that was human caused and maybe generated by HAARP and everything. So in that sense, you know, I talked to a lot of people here, you know, especially Uber drivers, because I usually just took Uber. Uber was so much cheaper than renting a car throughout the entire time. I just want to say that too. Especially if you're just like in and out of the city. You know, if you want to go towards the countryside, you need a car, obviously, and we'll have a car for that. But just talking to a lot of local Uber drivers, you know, people are like, oh, I don't think we'll have one. But then this one woman was like, I think we might have one again. And if that's the case, it's just not going to look too great because the entire electricity network fell out. And from what I'm gathering, heating, everything is based off of electricity here. There's no gas heater in that sense. There might be stove or oven heaters, but usually it's all electricity, you know, like the AC is based on electricity too. And so if that happens, that's not going to be nice. But those are my initial impressions, and we'll see what else is going to come through. All right, guys, I'm going to show you a bit more food and culture in Texas. Alright, so, oh my gosh, just had dinner for the gazillionth amount of time here in San Antonio. And yeah, I do have to say, I'm not really impressed by the food so far. I hate to say that. I'm not sure if I just keep trying out like the wrong places or what exactly is going on. I really don't know. But it's not mind-blowing. It's just okay. And the service is great though, don't get me wrong. It's just that the flavors aren't that impressive somehow. It's not working. I don't know. Some things are just not working, whatever they're doing. It's not mind-blowing, you know. So I forgot to mention something, and if I can record a clip, I'll try to blend it in. Otherwise, you can just imagine it yourself. But basically, this is all Scooterville. Like once you go around the area of the Riverwalk, you have all of these electric scooters somehow, and I'm so confused about them. Like they make no sense, right? Makes no sense to have an electric scooter somewhere where people can literally just walk or drive a car. And I feel like the moment you have those electric scooters in a city, that's kind of like tech central, you know, like tech industry takeover. So you have all of that. And it's so funny because today one of my drivers was actually saying, oh, that's so funny that, I mean, I'm like, he was saying he's surprised that no one has yet died from those electric scooters because they're like all over the city. They're in the traffic too. And it makes no sense to have a scooter. To be honest with you, from a logical standpoint, it makes no sense. So I'm always wondering if they're tracking people, like the people's progress, kind of like mapping out an electronic map somehow, so that they have that electronic artificial map for the future, like an AI grid of the city or something like that. But yeah, it's usually like blockchain central is what it means. If people are wondering about electric scooters and those kind of things, anything that's electric, you know, it's just there to track you. It's not just for your entertainment, as we already established in the Alison McDowell interview too. And so in addition, in the entire time I've been here, I have not yet paid once cash. That's another thing that's similar to Miami, my time in Florida from last year. And you can pay with card, everything with card, you know, everything's electronic. I have cash. I thought I would need cash here out of all places, but have not yet paid anything in cash. And for people who are not familiar with this area, San Antonio is also an area where you just have the military. So this is usually where the US military goes to do their basic training and everything. Usually all branches, maybe not Navy, but definitely like Air Force, definitely Army. So you have a lot of that influence too, in addition to, you know, the California tech industry kind of taking over Texas. You can definitely notice that in San Antonio. I'll be surprised to see how it is in Austin, you know, if Austin is more blockchain central or not. But I mean, it's not super blockchain central from what I can tell so far. You still have like older parts of San Antonio too. But it's just, those are just the signs that I'm picking up on. You know, after 10 days of being here, you can definitely pick up on certain things. All right, on the search for better food. So this is one of the scooters that I was talking about, and you have your little QR code and electronic display and everything on there. But yeah, you know, like no riding on sidewalks, that kind of stuff. It's from Biro, B-I-R-O, and you can find these type of things like pretty much, I mean, there's one across the street too, you can't really see it on this camera. But yeah, it's QR code, login and everything, you know, like tech industry right here. Here you have like way more too, actually.